Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back again. If it's your first time here, my name's Unrested and I cover all sorts of Japan's frequently asked questions about moving there, living there, politics going on there, and media happening there as well. If you have any questions about living or moving or working in Japan, let me know in the comments down below and you may see it show up in a future video. Moving on from there, I'm covering a topic today that's kind of close to my heart as I've kind of gotten deeper and deeper into YouTube over the years. One thing I see pop up again and again, and this was both in Japan and even now in America, I'm seeing young men recently graduated from college, try to head into different careers, and kind of feel like there's obstacles or roadblocks, or that they're not being accepted into those careers, or that it's pointless, or that it's a saturated market in whatever they're trying to go into. Or they do get a foot in the door and their first, I guess, experience with it is somewhat negative and they get disheartened as to pursue the goal that they had in that career for the future. I'm talking a little bit about that today, just concerning maybe teaching in Japan, moving to Japan, getting a job in Japan, and even jobs outside of teaching English in Japan, just looking for a career in Japan and what work life is like there, and how a commenter here said something that kind of like really got my attention. I wanted to read his comment. I know he won't mind. He's commented before in past videos, and he's kind of lived sort of the same life I have in Japan as far as like moving there, getting out of English teaching, moving into other industries, even starting a business for yourself, getting married in Japan, having kids in Japan, etc., 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 going the full 9 yards, or getting in deep as far as Japan is concerned. And he pointed out a lot of things that I also noticed, but I felt like if I just came right out and made a video about it and said, well, why do the youth do this? Like it's just like old man screams at cloud. Of course, like I don't want to put myself up on a pedestal, but when I do see another person living the same life I did call these things out as well, then it makes my own perception feel more legit, if that makes sense. I'm going to get into his comment right here. His comment is under, I hope I pronounce this right, Snake Enemanan. Snake Enemanan. Hey brother, Snake in here. Having a Japanese wife now for 20 years, I could be your older brother. I've been married to mine for 17, so yeah, that makes sense that he would say that. You are great, and you were my first subscribe back in the day. You are speaking the truth. I live in Matsuyama and have for many years now. In another video, could you please counsel the young ones that most jobs in Japan don't want to hear excuses? And we'll talk about this. He's completely right. Even if the excuse is valid. Just say gomenasai. Just say simasen. I will try harder, and all will be forgiven. Noticed even in my neophyte days long ago that all they want is, excuse me, still getting over a cold. All they want is for you to do your best, even if, as you and I know, it's not attainable. And even if you are right, you are still wrong. As an electronic engineer, so this guy's moved way past English teaching and got into a business that's very difficult to get into in Japan. So this guy definitely knows what he's talking about struggling to get into a career and having to understand the work culture. I had to start at the bottom, well, maybe middle. But if you can swallow your pride and understand the culture, speak even a little bit of Japanese, they will help you in every way to succeed. Thank you. Your boy will also thank you. I also play guitar and have many friends, so that has helped me too. He's just kind of talking about like things that have helped him get through life in Japan. It can get lonely. I responded on this. I want to read my response to it. I said, so true. I can't tell you how many people I've had follow my vids, go to Japan, and then later report their disdain for the country after being called out for simple fixes that they could have just apologized for and moved on. Or, if they aren't able to move on, they write to me about being unreasonably, quote unquote, let go for things like eating on the job, taking unscheduled breaks, being late every day, not having their paperwork in order. And it's like, really? Did you research anything about work culture before applying for a work visa? Also, why are you coming to Japan and expecting work life and work culture to be American? It will never be applied to that culture, and it will never be adopted by that culture. It's truly a shogunai situation. Shogunai means like nothing can be done. Like there's nothing you're gonna do that's gonna make Japanese people be like, oh, maybe we should work like the Americans. Okay, they're Japanese, are gonna work like Japanese. Nonetheless, I do hope, at the very least, Japan's work ethic can kick a few young men into gear. It certainly did for me when I got there in 2007. So, yeah, um, I have gotten a lot of stuff like that where like I've had younger men, sometimes women, but I feel like I can't really speak to work life culture for women in Japan. Even gaijin women, I feel like that should really be tackled by a female YouTuber who's lived in Japan and lived their experience. I feel like it's a very different work culture for men and women in Japan. But I can speak for being a young man going to Japan and kind of getting my stuff kicked in, if you know what I mean. Like kind of realizing like, oh shit, you're lazy. And I'm talking me, I'm lazy. I'm not saying like you guys or the people applying for jobs there. I realized I got there in 2007 and I didn't really have a great work ethic. I had to come to terms with the fact that, um, you know, what do they call that recently in America? Quiet quitting, where you just like put in minimal effort and, just kind of do the minimal day by day and kind of just barely skate by, barely meet quotas, barely do the job you're actually assigned to do the least amount of stuff that you can that's on your contract, or even do silly things like, I guess I never went this far, but I did meet other people who, when they were asked to do something outside of the contract, they just blatantly refused. Like, so for example, many of you, I'm sure, who've watched anime know that the people who clean a school are the students and the teachers. There's a portion of the day where it's usually after lunch, sometimes after recess, but they all get together, they grab brooms, they grab mops, they grab rags that they run across the hallway with, and they clean together. And I've literally had other people I've worked with who are like, and that's when I quit, when they handed me a broom and told me I needed to sweep. I'm not a janitor. If they hired me to be a teacher, my contract says teacher. And I think that's when I really kind of had a double take and realized, oh shit, is that me? Like, do I ever do that? Because that sounds really unreasonable. That sounds like really, really trying to push like my American beliefs on a Japanese work culture. They always go the distance. Japanese work very hard, and they work around the clock from the minute they check in to the minute they check out of work, which is sometimes far later than we do as gaijin. They work, and they work themselves to the bone, and they overwork themselves too. I mean, it's to a point where it's, work ethic is strong, it's hardcore, but it does reach a point that's also kind of like abusive and ridiculous, which I'm not a fan of. But what I am a fan of is the incredible work ethic I watched around me, and realizing if I wanted to be respected in Japan and be taken seriously by peers, I also had to bump myself up to that level. So there wouldn't be silly things like, trying to see if I could get by with slightly changing my style and getting past dress code. There was no such thing as like, maybe I can let my tattoos show a little bit at work. I mean, they know I'm a gaijin. They know my tattoos don't have anything to do with the Yakuza. They can't really be angry about that. No, you gotta cover them up. People are uncomfortable if they see them. Is it right? Is it racist? Is it culturally inappropriate? Guess what? Nobody cares. Work harder. You can sit there arguing those things, but you'll be arguing with yourself, all right? In the Japanese workplace, you don't have tattoos out in the open. In the Japanese workplace, you all follow the same dress code. So if the teachers around you are dressed a certain way, you don't get to show up in shorts and a t-shirt simply because it's summer and you're hot, okay? I had to wear pants all through the summer. I had to wear long sleeves all through the summer, and sweat and sweat and sweat to the point of like, almost like dehydration some days. But I did it. I pushed through it. Meanwhile, I'm saving all my money until I finally open my own school and can escape that. You should have some sort of future goal to reach out for, but you also need to push yourself through what you have as employment when you get there. Let's get back into some of these things I've said I've dealt with before. Where I said, Um, lit, I can't tell you how many people I've had follow my vids and go to Japan and then later report their disdain for the country after being called out for simple fixes. And these really are like simple fixes. This isn't like, sit there and do extensive, brutal exercises throughout the day or deal with torturous levels of working hours, because we don't have to work the same hours as Japanese. They will let us go after 8 hours, unless you're into some industry where you've gotten so deep into the company that they expect you to stay there as late as they do, in which case you usually know if you're putting yourself into that situation. But as a teacher, I'm just going to say as a teacher, all right, the career I know the best that I worked while I was in Japan working for other companies, not my own company, teacher, okay? You're going to be there 8 hours, you're going to go home. Yeah, you're still going to probably have to come out for Happyokai, which is like the winter play, the winter drama set, or Sports Day, which is like their races and stuff they do against each other. You're going to have to probably come out a Saturday for that. And don't sit there complaining. Don't tell them like, yeah, but wait, Saturdays aren't written into my contract. Okay, you can say that, but guess what? You're not going to get your contract re-signed the next year. Um, it's they'd probably be like, oh, okay, well, I mean, you're really supposed to come out for this because you're a teacher supporting the students. But if you don't want to come out, okay, and then they just won't re-sign you, and you won't get another contract with that school. I've seen people do this where they're just like, why should I have to do that? I don't have Saturdays written into my contract. I don't get paid for Saturdays. All right, go ahead and see what happens. But then don't complain later when they're like, I think you really should show up. Like, they're not going to outright be like, you better show up or you're fired. They won't get confrontational. They'll just be like, all right, go ahead and hang yourself. Here's enough rope to do it. Have fun. Um, the other one is being called out for simple fixes such as um, being unreasonably let go for eating on the job. Yeah, when it's time to eat, it's time to eat. You eat at eating time. There is lunch, and you usually sit down there and you eat lunch with the students. If you're in an ALT situation, or with the students at your Youchien or international school or whatever, you usually all eat at the same time. Now, when it's time to teach, you're done eating. Like, you're not eating in front of students. I had a friend who came to me because she was very upset that she had bought an ice cream to eat after her lunch. She finished her lunch and then waited till her teaching shift started back up again. And as she taught the class, she was like licking an ice cream cone. And of course, the school saw this as like super rude. Like, you're eating ice cream in front of all these kids who probably would desperately also be wanting to eat ice cream. And you just don't do that. That's like super rude in Japan. And her excuse to me was like, but it was gonna melt, like, and they don't have a refrigerator at the job. And it's like, okay, then don't buy it. Then don't go to the 7-Eleven or the Family Mart or the Daily Yamazaki and buy it. Just, wait till you leave school to go buy that thing. I mean, again, it's strange when I hear people complain about work culture in Japan because they haven't researched work culture before applying for their work visa. If you're working these jobs in Japan, you've made it far enough to get approved for a work visa, which means you knew you were going to be having your complete stay in Japan balanced on that visa. So why tempt fate with it? I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, learn what's going to be needed to be done. Check out the work culture by learning about it online. Of course, there's specific esoteric work cultures, but there's some things that are kind of the same everywhere. Like, you wouldn't eat while you're trying to teach. That'd be like crazy rude, unless you had enough like to share with the whole class. You wouldn't go to lunch and then take like maybe an extra 15 minutes because you started to chat to another teacher and you didn't realize the time. Like, that, they would be very upset that you were 15 minutes late to a job. I had one teacher I replaced, which is, when I tell this story, I'm just like, how did you think this was going to be okay? The reason he got fired was he was always kind of consistently late because he'd keep missing the train that he was supposed to get on, and he just, if you hit the train at the right time, you're fine. I know anywhere you go, Japan trains are 100% on time all the time. You make your train, you're good. If for some reason your train is late, they'll give you a special note that you give to your job that says, "Sorry, our fault, we were late." Um, this guy decided, okay, the trains, I always miss the train I want to get on, but I really love doing like fixie bikes. Like fixie bikes were his like big hobby. If you don't know, they're kind of like the speed bikes, like the Tour de France bikes. And he decided he was going to try and see if he could get to school fast enough on his bike by biking to his school. Well, he didn't realize it, but the distance was way farther than he thought, and he was over 2 hours late that day. And of course, he came into the office and was fired promptly. He had been late, here and there, a couple minutes here and there, which already starts to get on the nerves of the Japanese, because when work schedule starts, you start working. If you're working 8 to 4, 8 is when you start, but really you should be there 15 minutes early to get everything in order to be ready to go. When that clock starts clicking, they want you to be ticking. They want you to get your work done, man. And there's just no excuse. It works like this at every job. This isn't kind of an esoteric thing either. The same with the whole eating thing in front of students. Like, this isn't like that school only had that rule. It was an international school, but they still have very Japanese-based traditions. For example, even international schools that have students from all over the world sometimes, and are even connected sometimes to embassies, still have a sports day, and they still have a hapiokai, very traditional Japanese parts of the school year. And what was the other one where he said, oh yeah, taking unscheduled breaks, we did that. He's got a great thing here, he says, where he says, in most jobs, they don't want to hear excuses, okay? So if you mess up, sometimes it really isn't your fault. Like, let's say you needed to have a bunch of prints ready for your students to do your lesson. Like, you had chosen something, you downloaded it for the day, and you're like, I'm going to print this out and give copies to all my students to do. And this is what I'll bring to class and teach on. You're ready to go, you get to class, the printer's broken for the day, and you can't make copies. Now you don't have a lesson prepared, and you don't know what to do. And you come in there, and you're like, sorry, my lesson, I couldn't do it because the printer's broken. They don't want to hear about that. Why didn't you already have it ready before you got there? Why did you wait till the last minute to start to print it? Why didn't you ask your assistant to print it for you? Like, why didn't you, you know what I mean? Like, when you fail, that school, usually that organization, feels like they fail as a team, and they don't want to fail. So when you fail, they feel like they fail the students. And they don't want to hear excuses, because they're not going to make an excuse for themselves. So you shouldn't make an excuse for yourself. You would say, really sorry, I should have had this prepared ahead of time. I'm sorry I let you guys down today. I will do better next time. That's all they want to hear, all right? If you want to sit there and argue it about, yeah, but you guys should have had the printer up and running. You guys should have had this ready for me. You should have told the students, can you guys give him a couple minutes because he needs to find another way to print his copies. No, you should have been ready, all right? Even if it was impossible, even if it wasn't your fault, all right? You should have been ready. And you just need to say sorry, move on, and try to do your best. And that's great advice. And I think that's kind of universal too. As I, have worked in both countries, both America and Japan, and now coming back to America again to work, I have sometimes seen this with fresh out of college grads, and I think I was one of these people who did this. I tried to make excuses. I tried to be like, why is everybody judging me? I was really sensitive to any kind of input I had, and you just can't do that. You can't be sensitive to it. You need to take it, admit you made a mistake, promise you'll do better, and then actually try to do better. I had a bunch of goofy stuff I'd make mistakes about in jobs at the beginning, maybe not being professional enough. Maybe I was never late, because I can't stand being late. Being late gets my anxiety really high. But I'm sure there was times where I wasn't fully prepared for a lesson like I should have been, or something like that. Or I'm sure there was times where I could have had a backup. So for example, if I had a class come in and they're like, oh, we've already done that lesson, Mr. Ackerman, I should have had another lesson already prepared so that they didn't have to do the same lesson twice. There's definitely minor moments like that where I could have been like, okay, I could have been better prepared. And over time, now that I've gotten to this age, I realize all those things. But there was a time when I did get called out for stuff like that, or people did ask me like, why didn't you do this? Why? I'd be like, oh, so, well, I mean, here's the thing, like, like, I was the person making the excuse that the printer wasn't working, that, I didn't know I was going to get a class that I had yesterday. It was the same class the day before. It had already had that lesson. I was the one making the excuses. And I just got to tell you, like, if you're one of these people going over to Japan and, you want to get deep into the work culture, you want to make a long-term life there, just accept, how the culture works, where you just say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I'm not going to make any excuses about it. It's on me. I'm going to try to do better next time, and then actually try to do better. And you could be with that company forever. They'll keep hiring you back over and over and over again. Because you got to remember, most times, most of these companies are just going to hire you on a 1-year contract. I've heard of some that have done as long as like 3 to 5. You've got the JET program too that tends to run pretty long. But I've heard of people even coming over with the JET program, which is very tolerant of people not understanding the Japanese work culture, and still even mess that up, which is just wild to me. That you would get into a situation where you were gifted with that JET program and completely mess that up. I think I've told the story before where a guy I knew, he was in the JET program, and he came over with another girl who was in the same district as him. He had a series of schools in his area he was going to teach at, and she had hers too. Both very excited, talked about how they'd always wanted to go to Japan on the plane. He said they got there, he set up, he got ready to go, ready for his first day, and he got a call before he went to work on his first day, and they said, hey, can you head over to her apartment and see if you can help her out a little bit? And he was like, okay, what's going on? And they're like, we don't fully understand ourselves. Like, this is the Japanese staff asking him. Because, you already met her, you know her, you talked to her on the plane, you probably know her better than any of us because you'd spoken to her in her native tongue. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll try my best to help out. He goes over there, and she has locked herself into her apartment, and has refused to do anything that involves her leaving her apartment, because she said the day before, when she had walked around and gone to the store, gone to the conveni, bought a few knickknacks for her apartment to get started with her life in Japan, people had stared at her, and that she was sick of people staring at her, and she wasn't going to get out of her apartment until they showed her that they could give her a ticket to go right back home, because she was sick of Japan already. And it's like, whoa, what? Did you research anything about Japan before you came there? You're going to get stared at. Especially you're teaching in the countryside on a JET program. Sorry, you're just going to get stared at. They've never seen blue eyes out there. They've never seen a foreigner out there. They've never seen blonde hair if you have that out there. They're shocked, and you're going to get stared at. And I'm sure you've read this a million times on the internet or heard many videos about this. But to come to Japan and be shocked by the culture not being your culture is always, I feel, unreasonable. I feel that is very unreasonable. To come to Japan and expect everybody to speak to you in English, I feel is really unreasonable. I've had people talk to me about that too, that I went to Tokyo, I thought everybody in Tokyo can speak English. No. Tokyo has a much higher percentage rate of people who do speak English, but don't go there expecting English. Or people who come to where I'm at in Osaka, I've talked about this before, Osaka's not known for having great English. Please remember, Japan has the lowest English literacy rate in all of Asia. It's low, all right? Come there ready to have to learn Japanese. And like this guy said right here, he said, even if you learn a little bit, you can go pretty far. And that's very true. I'm taking Japanese lessons again, trying to get myself up to an adult level of vocabulary and everything like that, because right now I kind of talk like a 6th grader. That's probably what level I'm on. But even as someone speaking as an elementary school student, I guess that would be middle school, speaking as a middle school student, as an adult, people were so happy to just talk with me in their native language. They didn't have to worry about trying to stress remembering all kinds of English words. And that made life much easier. I got multiple jobs interviewing completely in Japanese, even though my Japanese was straight garbage. They were the interviewers were like, all right, you got this. Like, this is awesome. We're doing the whole interview in Japanese. This is sick. And I wasn't even answering in like Keigo, which is like the polite language you should actually use when you're in a business situation. They didn't care. They were just stoked that I had made the whole thing easier for them. And they're like, if this guy's going to go out of his way to learn enough to get through an interview in Japanese, he'll probably do a lot more with trying to be in harmony, which is like the most important thing when you learn in the workplace, harmony in the workplace, when he gets there. So yeah, exactly what Snakein said there. Put a little bit of effort in there, go the little extra mile, and your future's sealed. You'll do fine. But don't go there expecting American ways to be adopted by the people you work with in a Japanese work culture. Don't expect English to be the language they speak around you. Don't expect work life to mimic anything that you've ever experienced in American work life. And get ready to apologize, say you're sorry, and that you'll do better and try harder with whatever mistake you make, because you're going to make mistakes. It's natural, it's human, it's okay. Anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your replies on this one. I felt like this was a super interesting video to get into because I've seen this happen over and over again. I worry sometimes when I get people telling me stuff like, why would they fire me for being late? And just like, oh my God, dude, are you serious? Yeah, it's Japan. Like, they're not late. Like, there has to be a really good reason why you're late in Japan. Have you, any of you who've worked in Japan, visited Japan, or had people come back from Japan and tell you about what work life is there? Have you ever had incidents like this take place where you're like, what? What were you expecting? I'd love to hear it in the comments down below. Anyway, until next time, I will talk to you again real soon. I'm going to be streaming tonight. I'm going to try and do my TTRPG stream first and then just have a down-to-earth chit-chat with you guys, JFAC style. Going to try and do a little bit of both, and maybe hang out with you on Sunday too. Some people have been requesting that I do some of the drawing videos again, where I just sit there and talk with you guys about Japan while I draw. They said they're very relaxing, and guess what? I always have a lot of drawing I want to do, so we'll see how those go again. And of course, look for the members video tomorrow. Being a member only costs $1.90 a month and gets you 4 extra videos that are anywhere from half an hour to an hour long, and adds a lot of content. So if you're thinking about do that, I really appreciate it. Until next time, you guys have a great rest of the day.